name's Doug Prey. I'm president of the Auburn Duesenberg Company. We're actually the oldest automobile manufacturing company in the United States. This company was established in 1900. I took over the company 9 years ago after my father died. He bought the company in 1960. So my background is growing up in this business. So I've lived it, I've loved it, and now I get to run it. So it's just it's a fantastic life. There's a story about my father buying the factory. It was in 1960, but he was actually a school teacher at Tulsa Central High School, downtown Tulsa. And he owned a cord. In fact, him and his students helped restore his cord in the shop class at Central High School. And he told his students that at some point in his life, he would like to buy up the leftover parts from the original factory that was still in business in Auburn, Indiana. A year after he made that statement, he got a call from a fellow club member that said, "We understand somebody from Oklahoma is trying to buy the factory." And he goes, "Oh my gosh," he said, "it's always been my dream." He said, "I want to try to buy the factory." Headed towards Indiana, which Auburn, Indiana is right outside Fort Wayne. And they drove all night, didn't stay at motels because they didn't have any money. They pulled up in the gas station a block down the street from the factory. They got into their trunk and pulled out what they called their PTA suits, and they put on their PTA suits, drove to the factory, parked the good side towards the factory, got out of this expensive car with their suits on, went inside and met with Dallas Winslow, the owner of the Auburn Duesenberg factory. And he said, "Young man," he said, "I would probably sell the company," because he says, "it's had its day." And when he came back into Dallas Winslow's office, he said, "Young man," which my dad at the time was only 33 years old. He said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Mr. Winslow, I think I'll take it." But then he said, "Mr. Winslow," he said, "since you're the richest man I've ever met in my life," he said, "I thought maybe you would loan me the money." And Winslow, he liked his tenacity in this 33-year-old young man. They actually worked out a deal. And then he ended up getting a partner involved. And in equivalent dollars, today, if he was buying that, it would be about a $2 million deal. A lot of people give my father, Glenn Prey, credit for bringing the mark back to life. When he bought the factory, he actually got the trademark for Auburn and Cord. So he owned the names. Nobody had heard of Cords, nobody had heard of Auburn's because they'd gone out of business in 1937. Well, he announced when he bought the factory, and it was all over the news at the time, that he wants to bring the car back to life and bring a 1937 designed automobile back to new status in 1960. And then they got US Rubber to put up a whole lot of money to introduce a new product they had, which was called expanded rhyolite. It was a plastic material that they could make car bodies out of. They could make boats out of it. And they wanted to introduce their new product, and they said, well, why not introduce it on a brand new car? So the car ended up being front wheel drive, a complete plastic body, 3 layers of plastic, front wheel drive, first front wheel drive car made in America after World War II. People say that Tornado was the first front wheel drive car. Actually, it was the Cord, and Tornado copied it, but it was the first mass-produced front wheel drive car. And now everything's front wheel drive. But it all started right here in this factory, first front wheel drive. So a lot to it, big story. The parts business, when Dad went into production, building new cars, he just let the parts business just kind of fade away. But when he passed away, he was still selling parts, and he was the only person here. And the family got together, my brother and sister and I, and instead of just selling the whole place and closing it down, he said, let's see if we can keep Glenn Prey legacy alive. And so they voted me in as only the 3rd president of the Auburn Duesenberg Company. And we turned this company inside of a couple years to now we are the #1 supplier of Auburn and Cord parts in the entire world. We now have 16 employees. We're now building a 3rd generation car. Dad built everything brand new, fiberglass modern engines, and I decided to do what he had done, something that's never been done before, is build a new 1935 car. Instead of fiberglass, all steel body. Instead of a modern engine, an original engine that we've updated. People ask me about the future of this company because we could have shut it down, sold it all off, and that would have been the end of the legacy. But the old factory here is such a piece of history, and it's a big piece of history for Tulsa and Broken Arrow. In fact, Broken Arrow lists this on their historical sites. In fact, we get a lot of tours coming through here wanting to see the factory and see the piece of history that's here. But I do have plans. We're going to build a brand new building that looks just like the original factory in Auburn, Indiana. It says Auburn, Cord, and Duesenberg on the windows out in front. And then we can display the finished cars and all the beautiful stuff and the neon and all the memorabilia. But then we're going to rent it out as an event center. So it's right at the entrance to the Rose District. It'll be this beautiful 1930s deco building. So it will pay to keep this going. So you don't need to know how to buy and sell Auburns and cords to keep the legacy alive. It will now be a profitable business. But then this business continue to run and be a tourist attraction for the city of Tulsa and Broken Arrow. And hopefully it'll just go on forever from that point on. If I quit working 10, 20 years from now, hopefully this is still alive and it's a piece of Tulsa and Broken Arrow history, and it'll keep moving forward.